So, Dorothy, most interviews that I do consist of two components, really. One is just the person's personal journey, and people complain when I don't include enough of that. They say, I want the personal journey. And also, basically, the knowledge, wisdom, teaching, whatever that they have, gleaned or amassed from that personal journey. And so that's what I'd like to cover in the next 50 minutes, and we can kind of apportion the two things according to how we feel it goes.
How do you question me?
Okay, so I guess a good question to start is when did you kind of, most people I know, myself included, can actually remember a day when it first dawned on them that there was such a thing as spiritual development. I can remember mine. And of course there are many other milestones since then, but did you have such a day?
I can't pinpoint it. What I could pinpoint is when my mother died when I was 12, I really, really believed that, I grew up in a Christian tradition, I really believed that I had faith as big as a mustard seed. She had died the day after Christmas, and her birthday was on Easter. Hello there. And I really thought she would come to life. My prayers were so deep. And of course, she did not. And so I got mad at God, and I wanted to know who this God was who could give life and take it away. So my journey was really to find God.
Okay. I'm going to pause, and we'll edit this pause out. But Ralph, do you have a mic, and is there a cord which I could use that as a corded mic such that we wouldn't have this staticky thing? Right? I know Ralph has a mic in the room, but is there a long cord we could get our hands on, and so we can just use that? And yeah, but is it wireless or wired?
Both.
We have a kind of a frequency issue in terms of no available frequencies.
I have a 256 channel tunable UHF.
Okay, talk to those guys and see if what you have would make it work. I think he's giving a thumbs up that it would. So if you would be so kind as to go and get that mic.
What do you want, a lob, stick pipe?
Something for me to hold. I don't care. Talk to those guys and see what would work best. Because if this keeps doing this, it'll be a mess. But we'll just continue.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll edit all this junk out. So I'm sorry about that. But so your mother died, and you got mad at God.
Yes.
And so what was the outcome of that?
Well, it was just, I think, being thrown into a big question early in life. What is life? What is death? And so, I also just wanted to be a normal kid, so it wasn't as if I was having a great spiritual experience at that point. Mostly I just wanted to know who this God was that I was angry with. So, if we fast forward, I began to meditate in what at that time was a Christian tradition. They said you could meditate on scripture. So I chose, be still and know that I am God. And it would be like, be still. What is it like to just be, to be still and know? So that went on for a while, and then other kinds of meditation. And then I got very interested in Zen at some point along there, and I also was a volunteer for Mother Teresa's Missionaries of Charity in the San Francisco area. So I volunteered for many, many years, the AIDS hospice, street work in the slums, their home for pregnant women, and so forth. And then I was one of those people who never ever wanted a guru. I felt sorry for anyone who wanted one. I would always say, why go to a person when you could have God? That was my sense. And then Ramana Maharshi appeared in a dream. And I never knew I didn't know who it was. I didn't know if he was dead or alive. I didn't know what he taught. But the power of that, you know that face, the power of that loving presence was so palpable that I just knew I had to find out who this was. So I started reading the spiritual teachings of Ramana Maharshi.
I can't tell you how many people have told me that he appeared to them in one form or another. Pamela Wilson and many others.
Yes, it's amazing.
He's a busy guy.
Oh, the mind streams are connected in some way. But yeah, so that began a period of self-inquiry where it was just a spontaneous thing. It wasn't like, who am I? It was, who's holding the microphone? Who's eating dinner? Who's Who's taking care of her children, who's looking at herself in the mirror. It was just those kind of spontaneous questions. And also a deepening desire to know the truth, to know, Ramana said God, self, guru are the same. So it was like that was percolating. Until a time where that question, if you ask that question and you ask it deeply enough, you'll come to a place of I don't know. And most times the mind goes, it backs up, or it goes off to India, or it does something besides stay there at that place of the unknown. But eventually, the question, if we get close enough with the mind to source, it just flips it. It subsumes that idea of separation. So that's what finally happened in terms of what I would call the first realization of true
How many
nature.
years had you been doing this sort of thing before it flipped?
Self-inquiry, probably about 3 years.
Okay. And what was that flipping experience like?
Well, I was one of those that had the big dramatic dancing, crying, falling on the ground,
In other words, you weren't an oozer.
I know, right, whatever that is.
Oozers are the people who just sort of shift
Oh,
in so slowly
no,
they
this
don't
was
even know anything
this was
happened,
a definite moment where identity shifted, and just that sense of being everything and feeling the oneness of all things.
Did you go into I got it, I lost it phase, or was that like a transition that never reversed?
Well, it's always deepening, and that was certainly just the first of what I would call other kinds of opening the heart and down deeper. I don't know if I ever thought I lost it. What happened until I met Adyashanti was that something began to just hang out in the absolute. So, in Zen they would say stuck in emptiness, and that was an experience that I didn't know I was having, actually. But one can get very good at staying very safe in that absolute perspective. So that went on for a while until I met Adya.
So when you were kind of stuck in the absolute, so to speak, what impact did that have on your so-called relative life?
Well, this is a funny story. So at one point, my kids were in their teens by this time. So, and my son is, both my kids are, but my son and I were having this very deep conversation, and so I was trying to explain to him, I'm not really your mother, and you're not really my son, and what we really are, and I'm going on, and he's kind of scratching his head. And I didn't even know the shift had happened until some years later, and we were on a boat, and he's 6'3", but he was laying down on this bench and had his head in my lap, and he just said, "Oh, Mom, I'm so happy you can be my mom again." Oh, that's great. So it was kind of, it was that not even realizing in myself that something had shifted, but it definitely shifted back to that acceptance and the willingness to just live this ordinary human life.
Yeah. Do you feel like, you probably, as a teacher, you've probably seen many people go through that phase, right? Do you try to help them move on through it more quickly rather than get stuck there for a long time?
You mean the emptiness piece, or the I've got it, I've lost it?
I am not a person, and there's...
Oh, well, it's kind of hard sometimes to break through that because it's so free, and it's so detached in a certain way that one can hang out there for quite a long time, and it's kind of like you come only halfway around the circle.
Yeah.
To wake up to the absolute is an amazing and important thing to do. And of course, in spiritual teaching, it's often, there's often a division that isn't true, but a division that's made just to invite people to realize there's another dimension of themselves, this transcendent dimension. So it depends on the person and
well, in Zen,
situation.
Isn't that why they whack people with a stick if they're,
I never
say,
did
hey,
get
did
whacked.
anybody feel that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One great story. Someone had a really true, authentic awakening, and it wasn't that it wasn't authentic, but I think it was Aiken Roshi threw something at his head. Who felt that? Yeah. It was. We have to come back into this relative world as what we truly are. That's, to me, what awakening is about. It's not about separating ourselves from it.
Yeah. I mean, if it were about separating ourselves from it, why would we need a relative world?
There you go.
You know? I mean, what would it all be for?
Exactly. That.
Yeah. Okay. So then, what year did you meet Adya?
2001.
That's pretty early on, relatively. And I guess his operation wasn't very big at that point, so...
Yeah, it wasn't. We both were speakers at a non-dual wisdom and psychotherapy conference together, and a lot of my friends had seen him, but I wasn't looking for a teacher. I felt like the journey had ended. You know, I was done. Do you know, you have that illusion at some point.
As Francis would put it, did someone stick a fork in you?
Yeah, right, exactly, exactly. So anyway, I was the first speaker in the afternoon. He was the keynote speaker, and when he began to talk, I just felt this incredible transmission that I knew I needed. And as Grace would have it, he was doing a retreat in the Sierras, I think beginning the very next week, and it had already been set up. And so the organizers of that retreat, I said, you know, if you ever do this sort of thing again, I'd love to be included. And the very next day, one of them said, somebody is too sick to go, would you like to come? So I was working as a psychotherapist, we had house guests, my husband was in the middle of a trial, he was a lawyer. And ordinarily I would never have done anything in 1 week. I'd have given my clients much more notice and so forth, but it was just obvious, go. So that was the beginning of my time with Adyashanti, and you know, he really was, well, some people called him at that time the closer, because so many people came to him who had already had some degree of awakening or some very deep glimpses of true nature. But while I was with Adya, and he is still here in my heart, always, but there was this, you know, awakening of the heart and awakening of the hara, we might say, where something just falls away. And also...
On that very first retreat, or just during the whole...
Well, on that first retreat, there was a sense of things were just what they were, without any additions. Just washing the dishes. Not liking or disliking the dishes. Just the outhouse. Not, ooh, it smells terrible. It was just what it was. That didn't last indefinitely, but there was that sense on that first retreat with him that this was a dimension that was truly free of additions from the mind.
And somehow just the idea somehow facilitated an atmosphere in which that recognition was readily available or something.
It's a mystery how these things happen. Yeah. You know, I can't say what was the cause of anything, really. I mean, I think everything has infinite causes, really, and conditions. So it was just the experience of that moment.
Great. And this was 2001. Now, we'll kind of go through some more details, but fast forwarding a bit, has there been, or do you even believe in such a thing as a kind of a final realization after which you are not going to be expecting any more significant breakthroughs, or do you feel like it's just a never-ending?
Well, as I would say, in the infinite we are, how could there be an end to the deepening? You know, some
would argue, if it's all one, how can one have shallow and deep? You know, it's just one. How can there be levels or gradations of it?
Right. I mean, reality is as it is. You know, this awake space is as it is. But our experiences are shifting from moment to moment, aren't they? You know, right now I'm experiencing you nodding. You know, and so experience can deepen. You know, what we are doesn't deepen. It's already as it is.
Right. So these people who say, well, everybody's already enlightened, you know, that includes Pol Pot and Adolf Hitler, and everybody who ever lived, so it's meaningless, as far as I can tell.
Well, it's an interesting question, because, you know, in awakening to your true nature, you see that everything is that. And that there's, at least the way it showed up here, there's no separate one to enlighten. You know, the me thinks there is. But to wake up to the totality is realizing there's no separate one to awaken. And therefore, there are definitely levels of bumping up against that knowingly, and those expressions where that hasn't happened. And so if we knew we were one with everything and everyone, I think there would be much less violence and power tripping and all the rest.
We would do unto others as others
Absolutely.
as we would have others do unto us, because we would see others as us.
As ourselves, absolutely,
Which is an interesting point. I mean, would you agree that perhaps spiritual awakening of the type that we're discussing here is the real antidote to the world's problems?
Who knows? I can't speculate as to what would be the antidote to the world's problems, because life in totality are just moving as it moves, minute to minute, moment to moment. But it certainly would help.
Yeah. So let's parse it out a little bit. And we've just agreed that it's kind of a never-ending unfoldment or deepening or refinement or clarification
I hope so.
or whatever.
I hope there's no end.
Yeah. What are some of the significant milestones that you have encountered, since those initial stages with Adya?
Well, I was speaking about this earlier today with someone, but for me, and I think it's the case for many people, many minds believe that I couldn't possibly be awake unless all of these things had already happened, As I said in some poem I wrote one time, until I've planted my peace garden, until all my furniture is arranged in a certain way, until I no longer have this feeling, and so forth. But the surprising thing here, anyway, was just that this freedom is the freedom to have the experience of the moment without resisting it, without anything saying it shouldn't be here, because here it is. So that's an incredible liberation from self-judgment and from. It doesn't mean, wow. It doesn't mean that the truth, as it's moving more and more deeply in the system, doesn't see those moments where we're out of alignment, and then we have the opportunity to investigate what's really here, what wants to be seen here. So it's not a go back to egoic living where anything goes, but there's no refusal of what's here. So if it's anger, if it's conflict, if it's a confused mind, if it's whatever it is, that's what's here.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting question. A lot of people, I've heard that many people say that sort of thing, like whatever it is, anger, confusion, this and that. And I was talking with Mariana Kaplan the other day, and we were talking about how all the people she talks to privately who are her spiritual teachers, and many of them are going through all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And one would hope, let's talk about the utility of awakening, if we can use that phrase. One would hope that we're clearing out a lot of garbage as we evolve spiritually, and that our life isn't going to be such a chaotic mess. Do you think there's any merit to that notion?
Well, as far as I can tell, awakening is not, it doesn't give the me anything.
No, but doesn't it refine the me? Because we've talked about how there's
Well, there's
more and more
transformation.
refinement.
Absolutely, there are transformations. But you can be, we've all seen this, haven't we, with certain spiritual teachers? There's an incredible clarity. An incredible ability to point in such a way that people feel and experience and somehow know this dimension that seems more true, and they're not necessarily grown up in certain other ways.
Yeah.
Do you know? So there's a growing up and being awake may not happen all together at the same time.
Do you feel that? I used to feel like there was a tight correlation, that whatever degree of spiritual progress you made, there was going to be an equivalent degree of all these other lines of development. It's
going to look a certain way.
Yeah, but now I kind of see it as a big, stretchy rubber band. There's going to be some correlation, and the rubber band, once it stretches to a certain point, it's got to pull the other stuff along a little bit, but it has a lot of latitude.
Well, it's kind of like, as Adya would say, it's like a bungee cord,
Bungee cord,
Yeah, you go very deep, and there's often, you know, the result of it coming back up to, I mean, what I would call our egoic mind, which isn't a thing, it's just a movement. It's a movement of thought, the I thought. It simply moves to resist, to try to manipulate, to control, all of those things. And it can hang out quite a long time. Do you know? It can claim the awakening. And we've seen that happen many, many times. You know, I'm awake and you aren't. But that's completely, I mean, from my perspective, you're not seeing what's true if you make a claim like that.
Yeah. I used to use the analogy of sleeping elephants. Anybody hear this analogy where there's like a whole herd of elephants sleeping, and you manage somehow to tiptoe through the herd of sleeping elephants and kind of get to the other side, and then, but somehow or other, maybe the tiptoeing stirs up a few elephants, and so there's some commotion, and you have to come out again, you know, before the elephants totally wake up. But maybe if you continue that process long enough, you know, you have elephant-free territory.
Well, it's part of what you were mentioning a little while ago about the I've got it, I've lost it, because many folks, in fact, most that I know of, who have a deep awakening to their true nature, and it's quite authentic, often then will have all this stuff come up. What have I done wrong? I thought I dealt with this for 20 years in therapy, or whatever it is, and here it is again. You know, but what I would say is that truth and love are really just moving in the system in a way to show us wherever we're still divided, wherever there's still a sense of separation. So we haven't done anything wrong. Do you want to do something?
Yeah, we're just going to change mics here, and we'll
okay.
edit that little bit out.
Well, that's all right.
Thank you.
Well, that looks...
Does it work okay? Let's see. Testing. Yeah, you couldn't test it with us talking, could you? It's turned on. I see little lights blinking. And I'm talking. Here it comes. Okay, great. And we won't have the static. Thank you.
Looks like a very sleek version now, doesn't it? Cool. Wow.
So I'm sorry, can you pick up the thought? Do you remember exactly?
Well, I've got it, I've lost it. You see, when things come up, we think awakening looks like the awakening experience. Now, that is an incredible experience, but when we're hooked on experience, we're going to keep trying to go for the next one, the next big one, or the next bliss moment, or the next whatever, everything falls away moment. But you see, to live as this that's awake is to be present to what's right here and now. So these things come up to be liberated.
Yeah.
Do you know? And we have the opportunity when that happens to actually become interested in what is this experience made of? What is it really? And you know, what I find in terms of working with people and in my own experience as well is what is it like to go through all the layers of experience all the way through, because that's what ultimately has a liberating potential.
In a discussion we were having the other day with some people, that we were contrasting kind of the notion of doing a lot of healing and house cleaning and so on pre-awakening, so as to have versus, you know, awakening and then having the stuff hit the fan afterwards because that house cleaning hadn't been done. You have any kind of comments on those two approaches?
I would say it happens both ways, and that the house cleaning post-awakening probably is much easier because there's nothing, or there's less resistance to actually being present to what's here. So we're not trying to fix a self anymore, you know, and yet here is this moment of conflict, or here is this moment of separation. And so there's more of an interest, if we're devoted to truth, that is, there's more of an interest in actually going into it and finding out for yourself, what is this? Rather than pre-awakening, it's more like, how do I fix a deficient me? How do I fix the flaw? How do I never suffer again? How do I, whatever. So there's a, you know, it's more of a linear thing, whereas this it feels like it's more of a vertical exploration.
Excuse me. Yeah, someone used the example of if you had some poison, let's say, and you drop it into a glass of water, then it's really going to be a noxious glass of water. But if you took the same amount of poison and dropped it into an ocean, the ocean would have the capacity to dissipate it, and the ocean would appear pretty much the same. So post-awakening, house cleaning you can probably process a lot more stuff more efficiently than pre-awakening.
And, I'll just mention this because I think it comes up, at least certainly in people I work with. If we go down deeply enough through any emotion, the layers, what I would call the layers, could be anger, fear, sadness, and you just keep going and you come to a sense of vulnerability, and most people are spending their entire life never trying to be vulnerable again, but this openness when it's moving in the body-mind frequently feels vulnerable in the beginning, because we've been so used to trying to protect and defend some image of ourselves. So, you get to vulnerability and you realize, there's a sense of not being in control here, and what's going to happen if I'm not in control? And then you go to the deeper levels. It's kind of like, and what's beneath that, and what's beneath that, if we really want to know the truth about it. So what's beneath that? And then there's a fear of living, or there's a fear of dying. And what I've discovered is that for most people, and it's not about a fault, it's just how consciousness is moving in that particular moment, but there's a preference. I would rather be a flawed, deficient, unworthy, unlovable somebody than to face into being no thing. That's infinitely worse from the mind's perspective that's trying to hold up this psychological identity that's separate from reality.
Yeah. I think that might be a bit of a misunderstanding, though, of what the experience is actually going to be once awakening happens. And people read stories of Eckhart Tolle having to sit in a park bench for 2 years and things like that and say, I don't want that, I have kids to raise.
Well, who really wants it? Because it's a subtraction of who you thought you would be.
Yeah.
It's not a good selling point for enlightenment, right. I have to say, but let's be truthful. At least in the experience here, it's a subtraction, it's not an addition. It's, and it's not just a netty, but it's like life is showing you, circumstance show you that you aren't what you thought you were, over and over again. And it's inviting you to keep coming back to what I would call zero, how the mind moves and then it comes back to zero. Emotions move and then we return to zero. But there are always holdouts. For most of us.
Life does not strength.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Dorothy, explain your string. You don't probably have it with you, but just so people understand what I'm.
Well, I did a presentation yesterday called "Untying the Knot of Separation," and I just brought a rope, and there was a knot in it. And if we look at the rope as being the movement of awareness as consciousness in the body-mind, that's what's identifying with its own creation. It's not something that's wrong or bad about how the mind is working. It's doing itself. But as you begin to inquire, who is this me really? Who's this, what is this knot? What is this contraction? And you'll feel it, in the body if you're sensitive to energy, that there's a knot of our separate identity. So when we begin to let the light of awareness, move into that knot, we begin to see it's simply the misidentification, of consciousness itself. So the knot gets a little bit looser and maybe it unties itself. We can't make that happen. It's not an intellectual exercise. But as I had some other little knotted ropes off of that knot, and those are the holdouts. We'll all have holdouts where there's a contraction around something or someone or some situation.
When we discuss this sort of thing, we're kind of discussing it from human individual perspective in a way, or at least that's the way the language works. I did this and I did that and I experienced this and that. But as you said earlier, it's not that the individual doesn't wake up. But it's kind of interesting to zoom out and consider that if everything is the divine, if everything is consciousness, then, from the perspective of the divine, as opposed to from the perspective of the so-called individual approaching the divine, it's a different perspective on what's actually taking place in this so-called individual. Do you know where I'm going with that? And would you like to respond to it already? Or you want
No,
to
say
more?
a little more.
Well, just that it seems like we're doing stuff, and it seems like, we have a destiny we're trying to fulfill, and that, we want to meet this we're lucky enough to happen to run into this teacher and all, and, this teacher provides this benefit and so on. But I kind of see that there's a sort of a divine hand in all of it, and there's a kind of the course of events that leads to our awakening is much more profoundly orchestrated by some much vaster intelligence than we actually realize. We were only getting a peep of it, and maybe we only appreciate it much more fully in retrospect.
Well, I would say the me has absolutely nothing to do with it. I mean, that's what we discover, that the one we thought was the me, actually isn't what we thought. And so when you understand it's all the divine moving, and see, we all want our divine to be only the good, the pure, and the beautiful, but it's also destruction, it's also chaotic, it's also confused mind, and we don't want our God to be confused, God forbid. But here it is, so either it's all it or only parts of it are it. And when you see it's all it, then there's space to see that the causes and conditions of any one moment, being what they are vast, and they go back from beginningless time, probably. I can't really speak about, but there's just that sense that it's all doing itself, and that doesn't mean there's no perception of choice, because clearly there is. But who's choosing and who's not choosing, that's for the mind to contemplate. But, from that deeper place, there's actually a choicelessness about living.
Yeah, I think there's a principle here, which is that kind of knowledge is different in different states of consciousness.
Yes.
And there's a tendency for people to kind of read a bunch of books and then apply the knowledge that's appropriate to a certain state of consciousness to their own state, and
Right.
end up kind of intellectualizing a lot of stuff that
You
really
bet.
should be experiential.
You bet. And that's why I think it's so important to be honest with our own experience, to be, when we stop wanting our life or our experience to look a certain way, and we want the truth more than we want it to look a certain way, then truth comes in to meet that. It begins to reveal itself in ever deeper ways when we're not attempting to have it look a certain way or to match some teachers. We're all projections of one another on one level anyway. So we're projecting onto this teacher or that what we don't see in ourselves yet.
Yeah. It's like we started out by you telling the story of your mother dying and how you
Yes.
got mad at God when that happened.
Right.
But I think if we can acquire the ability to regard life as a sort of a divine play that's ultimately benevolent, that there's a sort of an evolutionary purpose here, and that the divine is evolving itself into more and more forms, more and more capable of embodying the divine, then we can kind of be more patient and tolerant and appreciative of whatever comes our way, rather than saying, why in the heck did that happen? This shouldn't have happened, and all that.
Well, it depends on how we define divine, doesn't it? Because there's one way of looking into the no-thingness that I would call that dark face of the mystery, where once you bump up against that, you could never again say that you know what that is. It's an unnamable mystery. It can't be defined. It's kind of like being in deep sleep, where there's no world, there's no God, there's no other, there's no self, and yet there's something that's so profound you can't ever again say I know. Do you know? At least that's how it feels here.
And so, are you referring to something that you're experiencing right now, or something that you kind of experienced in a deep transcendent state and in
Well,
retrospect?
when it's kind of like these experiences are messengers. We're not trying any longer, hopefully, to have one sustaining experience. We're realizing what it is that's experiencing all of it, and it isn't a separate me that's experiencing. So once we have that, for lack of a better word, it's kind of a non-experience of no thingness. Everything falls away, and there's no way you can speak about it. I mean, that's why they say the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. There's no way to speak about it. So once you know that that's what's permeating life, that's what is, the source, we could say, of life, a mystery that we can never know because we can't make it an object. Well, then there's just that knowing. You don't have to be having that experience. But when the mind doesn't move, there's nothing here. And when the mind moves, there's this.
One thing some people say is that these experiences we have, which aren't perpetual, but they're experience and then
Sure.
go on, we actually do kind of incorporate them, but they become custom. They become so familiar.
Yeah. It's the new normal.
Like you eat food, and
Exactly.
it becomes tissue in your body,
Right.
And you're no longer aware of that meal, but you're benefiting from it. It's kind
Yes.
of actually,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of like if people have dealt with chronic pain or something, there's a new normal. Do you know now? That would be an envision of a limitation, and what we're talking about is almost the opposite. It's the sense of something's unlimited here. It's unlimited in its variety of expression and unlimited in the moment that can be experienced. But it then becomes the new normal. So you don't have to sustain an experience to know that this that's awake in all of us, as all of us. That's what's here in this room right now.
I've often thought that the new normal principle that you just brought up is sort of symptomatic of the compassion of God, that we acclimate to things.
Yeah.
Because you see people living in horrendous circumstances, but somehow they've acclimated to that to a certain extent, and if we had to suddenly transition to that and live that, it would be completely intolerable, but they've grown accustomed, and vice versa. If they were to transition to what we're experiencing, they might be in total bliss, but we've grown accustomed.
It reminds me of something Mother Teresa said. She said when she came to this country, she was struck by the spiritual poverty that she didn't find in India. She said, people can be in abject poverty materially, and they may still know that their neighbor needs something, and they'll share the food, whereas here she found a different kind of poverty.
Interesting. So regarding the continuum principle that we were talking about, if you look in your experience right now or anytime, do you discern that there is something that is a continuum?
It's not this way, it's this way.
This way. Okay, explain that metaphor.
Well, the best I could do as a metaphor is, to imagine this kind of cylindrical, eternal now, but has no boundaries whatsoever. And within that, everything that is, has been, or will be is part of how I would envision, or how, what's come to me in terms of how the mind stream is continually moving, but it's moving as this eternal now, which isn't an increment of time. When the mind gets hold of something like this, it turns it on its side, and now it looks like we're flowing from past to future, and that's what happens when this awareness moves through the conditioned mind. It moves as this experience of time, because then we can have a sense of duration. It moves as the experience of space, and we can have a construct of form. But for me, from one perspective, of course I can go to many perspectives, as we all can, but it's just here now, and we're experiencing this piece of it. And there can be the mind stream of sports, the mind stream of music, the mind stream of medicine, of physics, of science, of spirituality. Do you know that's all moving itself
If you could speak to the 17-year-old, was it Dorothy, whose mother had
12.
12-year-old Dorothy, whose mother had just died?
Yeah.
What would you tell her now?
That child, you mean? What would I tell myself as a child?
You know, if the current Dorothy could send a message to the 12-year-old Dorothy, whose mother had just died and was mad at God and didn't know what life was all about, you know, what would you like to tell her?
Well, in my life there have been many deaths and separations and partings and so forth, and I would say, because I had this feeling like I'm here to learn that there's no separation and to learn to love, and I've felt that kind of from way, way back. And then I would say, if that's what I'm supposed to learn, then why are all these separations happening? And, you know, I look back on it now and I say, this was life's compassionate movement. Because what's happened from that is the knowing that there is no separation. And it's been so potent since my husband's death last year, you know, that just there is no separation in this heart that we share. Doesn't mean I don't miss him. It doesn't mean that there's no moments of grief. But this that we are, this spirit that we are now, and the form may transform. It doesn't die, it just transforms, right? And we're still what we always were. But now I get to see that spirit of him or of Adya or you or any, you know, here it is in the clouds, here it is in the bird song, here it is in the, you know, in the moment.
Yeah.
It's not someplace else.
I guess you're kind of saying that if you hadn't actually experienced those separations, you might not have learned that lesson.
Possibly. You know, we don't know why life moves exactly the way it does. There's a lot of theories about it. But I have read many Zen master stories, and many of them lost parents at a young age, some younger than that. And it does throw you into the big questions early. Or it's possible. It does.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point. I mean, whether there's a correlation between the difficulty in life that one encounters at a young age and the zeal with which one ends up pursuing spiritual realization.
Yeah. I think zeal is an important word, because I do feel like our intention, our desire. I mean, when I would first meet with somebody, say for the first time, I would often ask a question like, "What's the deepest desire of your heart?" Because it feels like that's like the rudder of our life, and we may not be conscious of it, but is it really to make $1 million? If it is, have it. Yeah, go at it, have at it. But that the deepest desire, and when that deepest desire is to know the truth or to know God or to know yourself, it invites that experience. Something responds.
My former teacher used to say that the angels in heaven aren't really interested in enlightenment because they've got it so good. It's just this beautiful celestial world. They don't feel like closing their eyes or anything else, And this kind of the school of hard knocks actually gives you more of an impetus to see what the truth really is.
Well, what was the Buddha's whole path? He saw old age, suffering, and death,
right.
and that pushed him out of it, what most egos would think was an incredible existence, as much, wine, women, and song as he could possibly want. Life will move however it moves to awaken itself in whatever way that happens, and it happens in so many different ways for different people. I don't think there's not one size fits all.
Yeah, my friend who just handed me this microphone he's taken like 40,000 pictures of butterflies, and he can name 100 and something different kinds of butterflies just actually by seeing them fly by and all.
Yeah.
Look at the diversity and the richness of nature itself.
Yeah.
The unbelievable creativity of the Creator, if you want to speak in those terms.
Sure.
So
it's
definitely
amazing.
not a one-trick pony.
Right. It's an amazing thing, this life that we're privileged to live. To have an experience called life is an amazing gift. Yeah. It's truly an amazing gift.
So there's a question I typically ask toward the end of most interviews, and that is that do you have any sense of where it goes from here for you? You have kind of you see a horizon out there that you're moving toward, or are you just so completely in the now that you don't worry about that and let?
Well, we can't know that. I mean, can you say what's going to happen tomorrow?
No, but I
can't.
can sort of say that I can see areas of my personal development that I hope will continue to flourish more. Like, I could have more expansion of heart and
Sure, of course.
more wisdom or
Right.
intellectual understanding.
Right,
And
right.
underlying all that, greater clarity of consciousness and establishment in being.
So, I mean, so there'd be the desire to embody more and more fully what we've both experienced as the truth of our being, right?
Yeah.
So I would share that with you, definitely.
Good. Does anybody in the audience have a question or two? I should probably do that towards the end of each of these interviews. Would anyone
Yeah,
like
you
to
don't get
ask
to do
anything?
that on Skype, do you?
No, you don't. Well, actually, we do. I have a live streaming thing, and they can type in
I see.
questions.
I haven't watched
If anyone
enough
has
of
a question, come up here so I can give you the mic. If you have a question, because you need to be on the mic. No, come on, up here. You can bring her the mic, but we'll get her on camera if she actually comes up.
Yeah, that's a beautiful face. Come up,
You wanna
be on camera.
Come on up. Just stand up here by me and ask the question, if you don't mind.
It's not a question, I just wanted to see if you could improvise and give us a poem.
Improvise. A challenge. Yeah, right. I've written hundreds and hundreds of poems, and I haven't memorized any of them. These flowers on the carpet, they're made out of the same as the flowers outside. Do you know? And if you look deeply enough, you'll see that this energy is moving in these flowers, in these flowers, in the flower of your being. I don't know if that's a poem, but
That's a beautiful poem.
what came to mind?
That's great. Sir, did you have a question? Yes. Yeah, just take the mic and stand up, maybe face the camera, or face Dorothy.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hello.
I am a follower of Ramana Maharshi's. That was very touching.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful.
I feel like I have some, personally, some obstructions, like some deep desires. Many of them have subsided, but some haven't. So, what would you call the obstacles in your own path? That's question one. And the second question is, how do you now go day by day to day with interaction with people? How did that change?
I'd be more interested in the idea that you have to get rid of desire. Can I speak about that?
Yes, please.
I mean, desire is something that arises in our human experience, doesn't it? We're hungry, we desire food. We're thirsty, we desire a drink. Do you know? And the more we can allow this human experience to be what it is. It doesn't mean acting out on every desire. But when we're at war with desire, we're at war with the so-called ego, which is simply a movement of your own mind. It's not a thing, it's not a solid somebody. But when we're at war with our mind, we're just fueling. We're fueling the desire. We're fueling the fight. We're fueling our resistance to what is. So in this openness, this space of our own truth, we just see it for what it is. It's not right or wrong. It's just desire here. Now, sometimes the desire is so strong, we'll call it an addiction. But let's face it, if we were all in a 12-step program about thinking, I'm addicted to thought, right? Wouldn't most human beings say that? I'm addicted to thought, to thinking. Do you know? But it feels like we have an opportunity to see if just for a moment we're not acting on a desire, what's beneath that? What's underneath that? What's underneath that? Just like I was describing a little earlier, And many people with an addiction, and I'm not saying that was your question, but we're talking about a very deeply held desire. If you go far enough, there's a sense that many people have. I'll die if I don't have this. I will die. Do you know? Well, let's put our head in the dragon's mouth. What's that like? To die into this moment. You see, and then something. It's kind of like the way I would use my hands to describe it, it's like this awareness, this awake nature of ours, when it's moving from inside the thing that we're trying to get rid of instead of trying to get rid of it, but we just let awareness come inside, it begins to liberate it from the inside. Whereas the mind tries to pry it open or get rid of it, or what, But for me, anyway, there's this awareness is like a sun that just melts these frozen things, And so much of what feels like a block, it's just some kind of frozen feeling or frozen experience that hasn't been allowed to simply be. So when we allow it to be what it is, and I'm talking about our inner experience, It's like I think the Buddha said at one point, hold your anger as though it's your only child. It's kind of like bringing that compassion and that embrace and that intimacy, bringing it close so we can see, what is this? Instead of, how do I get rid of it? The mind wants to know, how do I get rid of it? But that's this awake space, this awareness, it has no judgment. And that's why it's so much easier to work with the stuff after we understand that, oh my gosh, this has no judgment whatsoever. It doesn't have an agenda. It's just shining the light on what is. And then we begin to see desire for what it is, Anyway, thanks for the question.
We'll have to end on that note.
Okay.
Our next speaker, but
Okay.
thank
Well,
you very
it's
much.
been
I
a
really-
pleasure, darling. Yeah,
Pleasure
thank you.
talking to you.
Mwah. Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks so much.